Day 2 of the draft, Rams house. And on today's episode of the Rams Report, presented by Prize Picks, we're going to talk some Day 2 draft targets, specifically at 61. We're going to talk about who the Rams could go after with their second round, 61st overall pick. And before we get into that, we're going to continue our discussion of Ty Simpson, 13th overall pick, the Rams' first round draft pick, and specifically whether or not Sean McVay was on board with the idea of taking him. Something that has been of intense debate in the Rams community and in the Rams fan base for understandable reasons. We'll get into it all in just a minute. But before we do, I want to hear from you. Who's your top target for the Rams today? Let me know in the comments if you could pick anybody that's still on the board before we get this thing started at 6 p.m., who would you want to see the Rams take with the 61st overall pick if you could have anybody that's currently on the board? Let me know while we talk Ty Simpson, because this has been, of course, the number one thing on everyone's mind. Is McVay on board? And I get it. The presser does not really give the impression that McVay was super amped about picking Ty Simpson, was super amped about the way things went. He's staring down Les in one of those photos. It's not a great visual. I will absolutely concede that. But if you think that Les Snead went over the head of Super Bowl winning, widely considered and widely known, in my opinion, to be the best head coach in the NFL, Sean McVay, if you think he went over his head to make this decision, that Sean, who is, if you don't want to give him the position of best head coach in the NFL, if you're out there listening to that, you won't get there with me, you can at least, I think, concede best offensive mind in the NFL. You think he wouldn't take his word, his advice, his opinion as gospel on the potential franchise quarterback of this team? The guy he's going to have to work so closely with for the next few years. Remember, just a few years ago, when Sean said the word that he was done with Jared Goff, that it wasn't going to work with Jared Goff, what did Les go do? He made a big swing. He trades for Matthew Stafford. In months, he makes it happen. He says, okay, Sean, you're the boss of that decision. If you don't think it's going to work with Jared, then we'll go get you Matt. We'll go get you somebody that it can work with. I think, and I know in my heart of hearts, and I think you do too, it may not be comfortable to feel this way, but McVay wanted this. This was his call. If not directly, he was absolutely on board. There is no chance in any world that McVay did not sign off, that McVay did not approve. I absolutely am 100% confident when I tell you that McVay wants Ty Simpson. His reservation comes from one of two things, in my opinion. A disappointment at missing on a target at receiver, be that Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson. I think likely Carnell Tate. I don't think they expected the Titans to take him at 4. I think they thought there was a world in which they could trade up and go grab him at 6 or 7. Or potentially it comes from not wanting Matthew Stafford to feel any type of way about this. From not wanting Matthew Stafford to watch him at a press conference get giddy about the idea of his replacement, essentially. Imagine your boss getting so excited about the hiring of the guy who's going to replace you at work. And he's like, man, this dude is the best. Man, this dude's going to come in and just rock it out and be something like we've never seen before. Like, at the end of the day, you're sitting there at work like, okay, I guess I'm cold turkey at this point. I guess I'm old news. He didn't want Matthew Stafford to feel that way coming off of an MVP season. I think that's absolutely understandable. I think this is going to put a bow on Ty Simpson for now. We're going to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks, and then we're going to talk Day 2 targets. But today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. It's America's #1 sports picks app. If you love daily fantasy sports or you just want to make watching sports even more exciting, you have got to try out Prize Picks, guys. It's a great time to get started, too, because playoff basketball is in full swing and the baseball season is well underway. There's just no better place to cash in on all that action than Prize Picks. It's super easy to put together a lineup. All you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players. You can select more or less on their stat projections, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers if you're going for basketball. If you're more of a baseball guy, you could choose from hits, home runs, strikeouts. PrizePicks also has super awesome social features that make it incredibly easy to put together a lineup. Even if you don't want to build your own, you could just copy off of your friends. It's super easy, or your favorite creators. By dropping a follow, for example, me and producer Mike are both on there. I'm Jackson Durham with no spaces. You guys can drop a follow and you can see all the lineups that I've been putting together lately. And if you're a brand new user to the PrizePicks app, when you download the PrizePicks app today, use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive an extra $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description. And before we get out of here, I want to show you guys one of the lineups that I've put together recently. We're going with the less on Derek White's three-pointers, the more on Tyrese Maxey's assists, and the more on VJ Edgecombe's points. So you guys can tail me on this lineup. You can fade me on this lineup. Whatever you do, just do it at PrizePicks. And a big shout out to them for sponsoring today's show. Let's get back into our discussion, or start our discussion, of day 2 targets. Top guys that I think this team should be looking at. And number 1 for me is going to be Denzel Boston. And the reason why, and look, a lot of these guys, I know they're new names on this channel. We have not talked about a lot of round 2 receivers because at the end of the day, I did not think we were going to be in the market for a round 2 receiver. I'm going to be completely honest with you. But since we are, Denzel Boston is, I think, the one that absolutely makes some sense here. He, to me, feels like if you couldn't get Carnell Tate, he's maybe your poor man's Carnell Tate. He offers you a little bit of what you could have had with the Carnell Tate option in terms of, hey, this guy can fill Davante Adams' role in the red zone. The incredible value we got this season, what has been such a weak point of Sean McVay's coaching, success on third down and success in the red zone. And last season, he was able to make things so easy for himself because what was it in the red zone? Every time, 14 times that we were in the red zone, what did we do? Just chuck it up to Tay. Just go to Tay. Where's Tay at? I don't know. I don't care who's defending him. Just throw it in his direction. If it's in his zip code, he's probably going to come down with it, even if somebody's draped all over him, because that dude wins 50-50 balls. Denzel Boston is the same way. I'm not saying he's Davante Adams day 1. Look, he would have gone in the first round if he was going to be Davante Adams from day 1, but he absolutely has the ability to develop into that role, to fill that void for this Rams team, which won't be a void next season, but will very quickly become one as Davante progresses, likely into retirement after this season or the season after that. I think he's kind of locked in with Matthew Stafford. I think those guys are going to go together at some point, whether that be after this year or after next year. That remains to be seen. That's a discussion we'll have on a different day that isn't draft day. Chris Bell up next. The receiver out of Louisville is another really interesting guy. I think at the end of the day, this is a dude who probably goes in round 1 on night 1 if he doesn't come with a complicated injury history. That's really the story of Chris Bell at the end of the day, is the ACL last season. He tore it in the middle of the year, felt like he was on a track to be a first-round receiver, felt like he had that kind of ability, but at the end of the day, does not materialize for him because of the torn ACL. A little bit of like the receiver version of Jermod McCoy, someone we've talked about a little more on this channel. But Chris Bell, at the end of the day, I think if he's sitting there for you at 61, which may be unlikely, he would be an excellent pick. I think that's a steal at 61 because the word is he's ahead of schedule on his recovery right now. The word is he's ahead of track in getting back on his ACL, that he could potentially be available early this season, if not in week 1, quickly after that. It would be something we would be monitoring all season long, I'm sure, if you do ultimately come away with Chris Bell in the second round. But I think he would immediately offer you value as soon as he is healthy. Again, this is a guy who felt like a first-round talent before he went down. If he comes back as the guy he was at Louisville, that's a first-round receiver. That's a receiver who makes a day 1 impact for you. But at the end of the day, it's about the leg. Or about the knee, really, more specifically. Can he get back to who he was? Chris Brazzell is another name to keep an eye on. The Tennessee speedster slid into round 2, and where he ultimately lands is going to be very interesting to me because there's a lot about the profile here that screams first-round receiver. 6'4", big guy, long arms, incredible production at the SEC level. But I think a lot of people worry about the Tennessee scheme that he comes from and the way it seems to almost manufacture production for its receivers. We've seen this story with Jalen Hyatt, incredibly productive at Tennessee. He comes out for the New York Giants, a lot of hype around that pick, and just he's been nothing at the NFL level. He has not been able to translate into a pro-style offense. So I think there are concerns about does success in Josh Heupel's air raid at Tennessee actually translate into NFL success? Maybe not day one with Brazzell, but I think Brazzell has things that Jalen Hyatt doesn't have in terms of the physicals. At the end of the day, he's a bigger, stronger guy. I think he's faster than Hyatt was, if not just as fast as Hyatt was, especially when you consider the size. I think it's going to end up being a strength for him. And the production at Tennessee is incredible. Of course, Hyatt incredibly productive at Tennessee as well, but 1,000 yards last season for Chris Brazzell at the SEC level has to pop your eyes a little bit. Being a 1,000-yard receiver at the highest level of college football in just 12 games, that's absolutely going to impress some teams. I do think he's another guy that could go early on round 2. I think there's a potential for a run on receivers early. That's something that we're watching for here, which could mean that if the Rams absolutely want one of these guys, you might have to get aggressive and swing a move up the board. That's something that I'm watching for the Rams to do. Because we know that this team has outright told us we do not value picks on day 3 in this draft. They have 4 of them right now. Could they package some of them with a third rounder and go up and get Chris Brazzell, Chris Bell, Denzel Boston, any one of the guys that we have talked about? I think that's absolutely possible for this team if they're in love with them and they feel like there's a solid chance they won't make it to them at 61, which I think is absolutely possible. But if they want to stick and pick at 61, some guys you could go in that direction for that are likely to be there, not at the receiver position. Kyle Lewis, one guy we've talked about a lot as I think easily the best coverage linebacker in this class. If you want to address inside linebacker, which this would be the earliest linebacker that Les Snead has picked in a draft since 2012 when he picked Alec Ogletree. So that, it's been a long time since we've done something like this, since we've gone inside linebacker this early in a draft. This would be 31 picks later, out of the first round, of course, but the earliest he's picked a linebacker since would have been Ernest Jones, 103rd in 2021. So Kyle Lewis would be a change of direction for this franchise to invest in linebacker on day 2, at least in round 2. But we've seen a start to that already, right? Nate Landman represented some of that. This team doesn't extend inside linebackers. Would have been what I told you up until they did it, until they changed that seemingly long-term policy. Will they change their seemingly long-term policy about drafting early, recognizing that covering the middle of the field was a massive issue for this team last season and that Kyle Lewis is an easy way to upgrade immediately? I think he's plug and play at linebacker for this team. And just because he's primarily a coverage threat does not mean he isn't a savvy run defender, someone who takes a lot of pride in being able to come fill some gaps for you, even if I do think he's going to have to add some mass to be able to do that on a 3-down basis at the NFL level. I think he offers you high potential in both areas. I do truly think outside of Sonny Styles, he's the best coverage linebacker in this entire draft. And Sonny Styles didn't ever feel realistic for this team. We all saw him go very, very early. That wasn't going to happen, but what can happen for you is Kyle Lewis at 61. Of course, he is not Sonny Styles. He's not that level of athlete, but he's incredibly smooth. He's incredibly fluid. He almost moves like a nickel corner, and I think he would offer a ton of versatility and ability to the interior of this linebacker corps. Speaking of nickel corners, though, let's round out with one in D'Angelo Pons, the 5'9" menace out of Indiana. He is a fun player to watch. I will tell you, if you want to watch a feisty corner on tape, if that's what you like, a smaller guy who just plays like he's 5'9", he plays like he's 6'3", and has the attitude of someone that is 6'3" and 30 pounds heavier, all muscle than he is. And I love it. I love the dog in this kid. There's so much fight in him, and you can tell on tape. I think he's going to be very competitive at the NFL level. Size is working against him. At 5'9", of course, he is not the prototypical build of an NFL corner, but I think the Rams could be a team that isn't scared by that and is willing to plug him in as their starting nickel. We know there's a little bit of interest here. At the very least, they had a pre-draft visit with him, going out to see him in Indiana, something he took special notice of, saying, I had to go see all these other teams, but the Rams came to see me in Indiana. They came to visit me. And look, I think the reason why is, again, because this dude is productive and productive for years. And he followed his head coach. I think they like the loyalty element of it. That's something that Les Snead was talking about with Ty Simpson, about how much they respected his willingness to continue the journey at Alabama, to stay loyal to Alabama. I think with D'Angelo Ponds, it's a different type of loyalty. Of course, he ends up hitting the portal, but it's to follow a coach that he trusted and to follow a development path that he trusted, and it worked out for him. He bet on himself, and he bet on Curt Cignetti's ability to develop him, and look where he went. He ends up winning a national championship in 2025 after starting his career at James Madison, of all places. So he's an incredible story of resilience and of continuing to trust yourself in your own development process when others may doubt you. And I think that's something that alone could attract the Rams to this team. We saw last night that there's a lot more to the, I think in a Les Snead word, macro evaluation of a player for the Rams than just the on-field. They care a lot about the emotional elements of these things, the journeys that these guys go on, and them as people. And I think D'Angelo Ponds' play on the field and his journey through James Madison all the way to winning a national championship at Indiana is really going to speak to Les Snead. I think he's a prospect that's really going to stand out to these guys. And if there's one dude on this list that I could absolutely take, I think it might be Ponds. Outside of the receivers, I like a lot of these receivers a lot, but if you're going to stick and pick at 61, give me D'Angelo Ponds every single day. I love the idea of adding a kid like this to our secondary. Plus, he also put my coworker on just absolute lockdown duty. Billy Beebe did not stand a chance against D'Angelo Ponds. If you haven't seen that viral clip, check out Chat Sports Socials. It is absolutely hilarious. And that's going to do it for us on today's episode of the Rams Report. I will see you guys later tonight. As we did last night, we are covering every Rams pick. So we'll be here at 61, and we will be here again at 94. 4 videos in live, or not live reactions, but immediate reactions of those selections and what I think about what the Rams just got in brand new players. Hopefully they are some really, really good ones. I'll see you then.